and we want to make sure that we're being recorded correctly. So it looks like we are. And yeah, put that on me, I guess, instead of whoever that was. Oh, so we're going to roll with the safety awareness meeting. So real quick, guys in the room, just to set the stage, why do we do safety awareness meetings? Just shout it out. What's the real reason? You guys have been here before. Safety, yeah, that's a good start. Can you get a little more specific?
Sure. What's keeping awareness?
Yep, and a hand up in the back.
Rules and regulations for employees.
Yeah, kind of. And the general idea behind that is that specifically, we have a tendency to, a lot of times we're flying by ourselves, or we're flying, we're pretty young. It's been a while since we did this. Hey, Bobby. And we make a mistake. And it's a natural human reaction maybe to like, well, maybe minimize the emotional concept of that mistake. So we want to train everybody that if you make a mistake in flight, it's kind of your obligation to tell everybody else about it. Because we're going to have a couple of folks up here that are talking about things that go wrong in flight, and we all benefit from that. So that system only works if everyone's willing to admit their mistakes in public. That's kind of what we do this. So there's no shame in any of this. I did the very first one a couple of years ago, and then Dr. Williams did the second one. And believe me, we've all made mistakes in the air. And we'll, the goal here is to transmit that information so we don't do it all again. So to start things off, we've got something a little, I wouldn't say unconventional, but maybe a little atypical. We got Danny McNamara is coming here. He's a Coast Guard in his other life, and he's going to give us a brief on a incident that he was involved in, which was not aviation related, but goes through the same idea of risk management and how did they get into the situation and what maybe some of the repercussions were associated with that. Okay, so Danny, come on up. Let me see if I can get you rolling here.
Okay.
Okay.
Did it load the giant video?
I think it did. I sure hope it did. Okay.
No,
Awesome.
you have to share it through Zoom.
So why was it, it's not just sharing my screen?
No. You go to those Zoom controls.
All right. New share. Bingo. You're right. You're right. You're right. When you're right, you're right.
Doesn't happen often.
Okay, there we go. That's right.
There you go.
Yep. Okay, you're up.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So hopefully I'm not stuck to this microphone. I like to move around when I'm doing training, but
Do that.
okay. Awesome. So I'm Danny McNamara. How's everyone doing this morning? Pretty good? All right. So I've never talked to a group kind of in your regard. I used to do a lot of training for the Coast Guard. Currently, in my current job, I am a project consultant. I drive around to state and local governments all across the country and work on their process and implement software. So my main job is presenting to people. So it's kind of my forte. Before that, I was in the United States Coast Guard. I was a bosun mate. I did search and rescue law enforcement for most of my career. And kind of the background to the incident, at the time I had done around 700 search and rescue cases up into that point. I've been to heavy weather school. I was a heavy weather coxswain. That just is fancy terms. I was allowed to drive the boat in more extreme conditions than a basic coxswain, but not quite to the extreme condition of a surfman. So we have these levels, kind of like in flight where you have, transport pilot, commercial pilot, you kind of go down. Each level is allowed to do greater things. Same thing in the Coast Guard. You're allowed to do greater things the more qualifications you have. So I was kind of at the top end, about to get a kind of an elite status that I was training for. That's kind of what the training is. So at the time I had around 2,200 hours on the 47 motor lifeboat. You'll see in a second what that is. It's a big silver boat designed to go out into big seas and smash you around a little bit. And I've been.
I hate to do this, but the folks out on the internet land, for some reason, it's not advancing. So,
Oh,
technical difficulties, please stand by.
yep.
Let's figure this out.
Now it changed.
Okay,
It's not changing when it's in.
it's not changing. Okay, so just
Just play like that.
play like that. Don't maximize screen.
You get to see what's coming then. That's disappointing. Yeah. All right. So up to that point, I had been about 2 years at a specialized unit doing specialized training to become a surfman. So that's kind of where I was in my career when this incident happened. So that's a quick background. Now, as I go through this, I kind of want this to be interactive. So if you have questions, you have an idea. Maybe you see something that maybe I haven't seen before. You guys have kind of a different perspective than the military people I always used to present this to. So raise your hand, shout it out, whatever you want to do, so we can have a little bit more of a conversation. But next slide is, I said 47 motor lifeboat. This is what it is. It's a boat, you know, for the Coast Guard. It is 40,000 pounds. It's crewed by 4 people, surfman, engineer, and 2 crew for the type of training we were doing that day. You'll see the 2 individuals up on what we call the open bridge. That's where you drive the boat. And that's about 12, 13 feet off the water. So when you see the video, you're going to see my head cam, and just imagine you're 13 feet off the water. That's your viewpoint. So when you see what's happening, that kind of gives you scale to what's coming. This is kind of basic crew. You can see the boat limitations are kind of big: 20-foot surf, 30-foot seas, 50 knots of wind, and that's kind of a human factor. The boat can withstand a lot greater limits. The people on the boat can't. So just something to think about. Another thing people always ask about is, like, can the boat roll over? It can. It's designed to roll over. If you look above the heads of those individuals, there's a big silver box full of air. It's a pretty simple concept. That air goes underwater. It doesn't like that. It wants to go back up, so it rights the boat. So it's just creating leverage. So there's the boat I'm going to destroy here in a minute. So this is our operating area. So I was stationed in Newport, Oregon, which is in the middle of nowhere. This is Quina Bay, where I was stationed. So some key things to understand: the little blue star at the top where it says station, that's where the Coast Guard station was. That's where the boats moor up, where we do all of our assessments, you know, all those operations start at. We have tower. Tower is this person that sits in a booth about 200 feet off the sea level. It's actually kind of a cliff face right there. But they kind of have a global perspective, right? So when you're on the boat doing a mission, you might get tunnel vision, where this person is looking globally at the situation and might be able to tell you something like waves are coming, boats are coming, they, you know, what have you. So that kind of gives you an extra pair of eyes to a situation going on. Then we actually have the operating area. So you can see we have the kind of the channel, and then this is the training area. So just a quick background on the training area. We have a reef right here. We have these 2 lines. You're going to see that this is red and yellow in the video when the calling out ranges. It's just kind of where we like to train that. And this is the main wave direction of that day, was directly in. So any questions about kind of the picture of what you're looking at, what you're going to see here in real life in a second? No questions? Everyone's seen the chartlet before? All right. So quick overview of how Coast Guard does risk assessment, right? Military organization is mission forward, which is not a very good idea if you're a general aviation pilot, right? Having a mission mindset sometimes puts you into a situation where you might make a decision because you want to get home, or you want to do this, or you have a mission to complete. Coast Guard's a little different. So just something I wanted to bring up, because, you know, why were we doing this training? Why were we taking these risks? That type of stuff is all driven toward a mission. So the Coast Guard, basically, we define our mission, right? I'm going to go out and do this training. Then we take a look at all the hazards, right? Wind, boats, all the stuff that could go wrong, risks that are affecting the mission. Then we assess the risk. We identify options to mitigate the risk. Then we do a risk versus gain. So after we've done all the mitigation we can, we kind of figure out what's our greatest risk versus what's our gain, to make sure that we're still within what we should be doing. Then after that, we execute, and then we monitor. And the monitor is basically a big loop. You're just constantly doing this over and over and over again as you complete something. Because when you step off onto the boat, it might immediately change as soon as you clear the bar, or you get on scene, or something changes, right? That changes your risk, which changes, is this still worth doing? So that's kind of the risk assessment. So just kind of a quick, this is our risk assessment, because I'm going to tell you, throw some numbers at you so you have an idea what that is. So we're always looking at supervision, planning, crew selection, and this all goes back to how airplanes can work too. It's the same type of idea. This is just a little bit more detailed, because we actually like to have numbers. Military likes you to write everything down. So supervision, that's going to be like oversight of the whole mission. Planning, you know, how much time do you have to plan? Who was part of the planning? Is it a good plan? That type of stuff. Crew selection, that's going to be who's on the boat, what's their jobs on the boat, what's their thing. And this is all created based on mishaps. So when you look at a mishap, first thing they say is how much experience did they have, right? When you read an airplane mishap, they say, oh, the pilot had 2,200 hours. This is basically doing that in reverse. How much experience does the crew have, and how much risk will that create? So that's how the Coast Guard created its risk model, is based on mishaps. Crew fitness is pretty obvious, right? You fit to go. Environment, and then event complexity. And then each one of these gets a score 0 to 10, 10 being the worst, 0 being the best. So, oops. So this would be kind of a flow chart. Getting underway, that would be a GAR score. Then you get to the initial call, and then you're on scene. You can see how the numbers fluctuate based on what could be occurring, right? The weather's getting worse, you're getting tired, maybe the boat has a problem, right? So your numbers will change, and that will change your overall risk assessment. So that's kind of how the Coast Guard was doing it. So it's just kind of a quick 10-second dump a whole bunch of knowledge on you about how the Coast Guard was doing risk assessment at the time. They still do it this way. It's just, everything's always changing, so. All right, let's get to the fun stuff. Bless you. All right, so we're about to get underway. So we do a weather brief, just like you do in an airplane. So we all get into a big room kind of like this, and we draw on pictures. Where are we going? What are we doing? What's the weather going to be? What's the weather going to be in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? So this is a picture of all the buoys that we're looking at. The weather at the time is 10 to 12 foot at 12 seconds. That's just a period, how long it takes a wave to pass from one point to another. It kind of tells you how much energy the wave has, right? A 12-foot wave at 8 seconds is not as powerful as a wave that has a 16-second period, because there's way more water in it. So that's just telling you the amount of energy you're going to be fighting for the day. Winds are great, 8 knots at 060. That's a beautiful day out. We're going to be doing inbounds and outbounds. You'll see on the video what that is. We're going to drive into the swell, turn around, drive back out. That's all you're doing, in and out. So for the risk assessment today, for the whole operation was 2.8. That's a pretty low number for surf drills. Taking 47-foot motor lifeboats into a surf area with 5, 6, 7 people on each boat, encountering 12-foot breaks is kind of an intense thing. So we did it a lot. So our risk assessment always seemed to be lower than maybe what it should have been. But the 2.8 for the underway, and then each boat did a GAR score to make sure their crew and everything understood their risk that they were taking with their crew selection. So we're low amber for both those things. So that's a pretty good mission for doing training in the surf. Kind of a caveat, the Weather Channel was with the station at the time. So there was cameramen, not on my boat, but on the other boat. So that does, just being filmed always just kind of adjusts how anyone thinks, right? You go to do something and someone's got a camera in front of you, it'll make you stop and think, wait, do I want this on film? So it's kind of a added fun thing to that. So we get underway, just like you do on a airplane. We do boat checks. We check the entire boat, make sure everything is set. We set watertight integrity. We make sure all the stuff is where it's supposed to be, right? Because we get thrown around a lot, make sure everything's safe. We do power trials, same thing on an airplane, right? Full power forward, full power reverse, make sure it turns left and right, Make sure everything's operating within range. And then we're going to drive out, and then we enter the surf zone with 2 boats. So you can see here we have some stars. The first star is second boat. And basically, we always go and surf with 2 people, 2 boats. Because if one boat has an issue, the other boat can then save them immediately, right? So we're never too far from each other. So you can see we're on the lower part of the surf zone, they're on the northern part of the surf zone. We're in constant communication with each other. So we're going to get into the surf zone, lateral south, and then get to that point. That's kind of where the video starts. I will warn you, the video does have some language. I got really mad at myself when everyone was drowning. And started cussing at the boat. I was really cussing at myself because I had made a mistake and I was really upset about it. So you're going to hear the F word a lot. So just so everyone's aware.
If anybody's not heard it before.
Yeah, you're about to hear it.
This is the thing I want to see. Yes.
Beautiful. So I'm going to talk a little bit during the video, but basically we're sitting right here. We are about to do an outbound run into the surf. The whole idea on a Coast Guard boat is not to hit big waves. You want to hit the lowest energy, the low sides, the calm areas. So you can see like that's a wave you don't want to be in front of, right? One off to the left, we just sit where we are right here. Now we're stationed. Yep. We're strapped into 2 points and then also strapped to the seat. So the first part of this goes pretty good. Oh, okay. I don't want to yell into this thing.
I just want to.
So if you just heard what he said, you hear him say outside yellow. That's going to be those ranges that I pointed out to you. So yellow is close to the beach. Red is far away from the beach. We have lines on the rocks and the jetty to tell us where we are with the lighthouse. So pay attention to how much communication there is, right? Do you hear me talking at all right now? Right? In a training situation, you should be talking to your trainer, right? Letting them know what you're thinking, what you're doing, so they can anticipate your actions. Or just something to listen for. So we're basically just driving away, trying not to hit any of these waves, right? Just trying to stay to the safe area. So you can hear that I'm getting ranges, right? The surfman's kind of talking to me a little bit, making sure he knows what I'm doing, but I'm not talking. Something is very important. I'm not talking right now. You do get task saturated, right? I'm paying attention to the GPS to my left. I'm looking at waves. I'm listening for the ranges, and I'm also listening to the surfman all at the same time. And at the exact same point, I'm also trying to drive the boat.
You're at the controls here?
Yes, I'm driving. So when I'm sitting right here, you'll see off into the distance, there's the reef in front of us, right? Remember on that diagram, it said reef? So you'll see in a second a big wave break on the reef and then another wave break. And like in a training environment, we should have been like, oh, that's a big series, right? If it's breaking on the reef in front of us, that means that something big just hit the reef. That's why we use this training area. It kind of gives us a diminishing return where we can get rid of a lot of energy on a wave before it gets to our training area. So right now he's giving me some information. What he just told me was we're going to do an inbound, and I haven't seen a wave break on red. That's very important because I make a decision just because of that comment.
So you said the reef is acting as a breakwater?
Yeah, so the reef is about 30, 40 feet under the water, and so when you have a big wave, like a 14, 16-foot wave come through, it'll break, and then it comes out as a 12, 10-foot wave. So it just helps mitigate that initial, that wave just came all the way across the Pacific, carrying all this energy, and it kind of lets it diminish some of the energy, so we have a little bit more safer training environment. So I'm turning. You'll see that the whole idea here is this wave's interacting with the floor of the ocean. So it's actually slowing down, so our 47 can catch it. So as we turn, we're going to try to catch this wave in front of us. And you'll see that the peak will be off to my right side, the starboard bow. And we kind of aim for peaks because that's going to break and diminish all its energy. So you see me catching that wave in front? So everything's going good right now. You hear me talking? No communication from me right now. I'm looking around, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to, I'm just not talking. So listen for this comment. Here it comes. As soon as he said on red, I made a turn because I was told there hasn't been a break on starboard or on red all day. So that's my feeling, right? I'm getting upset. So we are well trained, so we all snap back into recovering of the vessel and backing up. There is a delay. You probably wonder why we're just sitting here right now. The red gears do have to recover. There's a transmission, so they have to build pressure back up because it basically just turned it upside down. There's a momentary sit where you're just sitting there like back up, and nothing happens. So right here, you can also see there's some lack of communication. The surfman tells the other surfman on the port side to take control, but there's no communication. I don't know that. I'm still thinking I'm driving, so I'm turning the rudder. I'm trying to apply power and that type of stuff. So then we start to make our outbound back to safe water, communicate with the other boat, and we start doing kind of the safety. So just one other thing I want to point out on the video is a little bit later. It's Oscar. He's just letting us know there's debris in the water. So it's not a man overboard. If it was a man overboard, we would all be screaming man overboard.
Oscar's the
Yeah, it's a deployment. So this is we're getting back into the area. I'm kind of going around the boat checking, so you can see that antenna just snapped off. Most of the antennas on the top got broken off. We go back down through, we're doing a safety check of the vessel to make sure it's all safe now. I'll kind of skip ahead slightly. Yeah, so you'll see right here, this door is not hatched. And you'll see I immediately noticed that, hey, why is this broke? So I go forward, I check to make sure there's water, but I come back to this door. This door wasn't hatched or wasn't secured properly. So when the boat rolled over, it swung open and actually smashed our 120 volt inverter and destroyed it. Which points to another thing I'm going to bring up right after we get out of this. So you can see that bar's broke. I'm like, oh, that's weird, right? Kind of bent it. I'm not thinking too much of it at the time, but it actually turns into kind of an important lesson to be learned about the whole event. So, anyone have any questions on what they just saw? Okay. So, oh, how am I doing on time? Am I talking too much? Okay. So the next thing we want to go over is like, what happened? You know, what do you guys think happened? So I was kind of giving you little clues to what what I'm about to go over, what I know what happened. But from your perspective, from that limited information that you just got, does anyone have any comments? Something that maybe they observed or?
Well, when you made the turn, you took the C on the beam, like right on the beam. Was that training purposes? Or?
No. So the 47 is designed to make a turn from the back of a wave into an oncoming wave normally, but that oncoming wave can't be braking. So normally as you make this turn, that wave was close and on my starboard quarter, which means it was in between. That's the wave on the reef that I was talking about. So there were two waves back to back right on top of each other, which should be an indication to us that, hey, this is a tight series. We're timing the waves. So we're like, oh, we should be good to make this turn. And if you're not too close, like in that situation, we're too close, I should have turned the other way or just not turned at all, right? Kept going, let the wave break, start to rebuild, and then turn over it.
So
right?
you got hit by the second wave?
Correct. The first wave was in front of us. That's the one I was chasing.
So, who was in charge? I mean, who's the boat commander?
Okay.
You as the driver?
That's a great question. So from a global perspective, how the mishap is written, the surfman on my left, Jason Hanneman, he was, no, that's a crewman. He's a forward lookout. The guy, there's a surfman literally standing, when we come back over, his hand's on the steering wheel. That's how close he is. He's standing right here. He's in front of the chart plotter. He's on your left, so he can literally talk in your ear. He is in charge of the boat. He's the pilot in command, as you would. To his left is another surfman, and behind him actually was another surfman, certified surfman. So we had 3 surfmen on the boat, but when we call it signing the boat out, whoever signs the boat out is their boat, right? They're the coxswain in charge. Regardless of whoever else is on the boat, they're the ones in charge. They say do something, you do it. Then there's an engineer, which I actually was acting as the engineer for that day, which is kind of the person in charge of propulsion, all the controls, all that type of stuff. And then we have crew. So the forward person was crew. The 2 surfmen were acting as crew. Even though one's driving the boat, they're obviously going to be using their skills as a surfman.
I guess follow on that is, what was that guy doing when you started to make your turn inbound?
Right.
I mean, it seems like he was the one that should have had that overall. If he's in charge, he should have that overall situational awareness.
So
your job is the boat driver.
Kind of. So I'll actually go to the next slide so you can see kind of the thing. So when you're in that situation, that boat driver is not driving the boat, right? The person in command, he literally, unless he pushes me back, jumps over and starts grabbing the controls, he has no way to control the boat physically, right? Not like in an airplane where your CFI can just grab the control, like, nope, you need to pull up, right? They can just do it, right? They don't even have to command you. They can just overpower you if they wanted. That situation is a little different. And also think, I'm not a brand new boat driver. Right, 2,200 hours. I've been training in the surf for 2 years. I'm about to make surfman. So he's a little bit more hands-off than maybe he should have been, but it's also kind of a trust relationship. That's something I like to bring over is overconfidence was a problem, right? He was overconfident in my ability, and I was overconfident in my own ability, right? I got this, right? The Coast Guard kind of is breeding this ego where, hey, can you do this? Yes. I don't even know what that is, but I'm going to do it. Right? It doesn't matter. I have to be the best in order to get this qualification. So you have this mindset of overconfidence, right? I can do it inbound, outbound. I hadn't done an inbound, outbound in that situation in almost 6 months, right? We have very limited time to do our training. It's a 3-month window, and in that 3 months, you might only get underway 4 or 5 times. So your skills aren't like something you're building on, right? You got to remember how to do stuff, and it has to come instinctual to you. So I was overconfident in the situation. Complacency, that's a big thing. I got complacent in being a trainee, right? I should have been talking, right? If I would have said, I'm coming to starboard, or I see this wave where I'm going to come to starboard, he could be like, no, you're not going to come to starboard, right? When I said come to starboard, I had already started turning, reducing power. There's nothing you can do, right? Once you start to turn, it's over. You can't recover from something like that. So if I was being more vocal, right? Hey, I see this wave to my right. I want to turn to starboard. They'd be like, no, you don't go to starboard, go to port, or keep going, or something else, right? We could have a communication going on. So me as a trainee, I've gotten complacent, right? I'm a heavy weather coxswain. I'm about to make surfing. I don't need any help, right? That's kind of the mentality that you kind of fall into. That also goes with your ego, right? Nothing can happen to me. I'm invincible, right? This boat is invincible, right? This boat is awesome, right? It literally will drive you out of anything it runs into. And it kind of gives you this feeling that it doesn't matter what happens, I'm going home, which is not a good feeling to have when you have other people's lives in your hand, right? And you're operating in that type of environment. The other thing I want to talk about is what ifs, right? For a very, very long time, I thought about what if I had kept going straight? What if I would have reduced power on my starboard engine for longer? What if I would have just turned back to port right away? What if I would have just kept going straight, right? What ifs? So this mindset of what ifs doesn't matter. It's good to understand what you should have done, but it's not something to harp on. You should learn from it and move on. And something I had a lot of trouble doing at first. I also think a casual training environment, I don't want to put any blame on the surfman, right? But maybe if I was being more vocal, if maybe he was like, hey, I want to hear you talking more, right? Maybe if we hadn't gotten complacent in the situation, our casual training environment may have not occurred and we've been a little bit better off. So then some other things, we didn't complete a boat check correctly. So that kind of points to lack of attention or lack to detail or something going on, right? Something's missing. Everyone is supposed to do a round of the boat. Everyone is supposed to look at stuff. So something happened where that didn't happen, which kind of points to, no one understands why it happened, right? But it points to attention to detail problem. And then the very last thing that is the actual event, right? Misreading of the wave, not leaving myself any room for error. Right, made that turn, that event happened, right? That is the least important thing. That is just what happened from a culmination of a bunch of decisions that were made leading up to that point. So don't ever think when you make a mistake, that mistake is just the end result of this whole other thing that is occurring. So you always want to try to figure out what this whole other thing is occurring so you can break that chain before that last little piece happens. Sorry, I had a cold this week and now I'm starting to lose my voice again already. All right, so the Coast Guard did an investigation, command board, training board, review mishap report. They did all this stuff, right? Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
You're on it.
Oh.
So that's where I wanted to ask. What's the Coast Guard? How did it feel about something like this?
Okay. Yep. Yo, that's a big deal. They don't like when you take one of their, $2 million boats down. So the command board, that's basically your little command. And then the sector and then headquarters. These levels look at the mishap and give their findings and comments and investigations on it. Then we have a training board, which is basically your training staff looking at, why did you make that situation happen? What deficiencies is training doing that caused you to enter that situation, right? It's kind of a give and take type of thing. Something to note, I'm going to bring up the mishap here in a second, but my CO had just made lieutenant and was about to transfer in about 6 months. So he was definitely trying to minimize the situation from a command's perspective, which didn't help me because that made me feel like I should minimize it. But just something to think about when you read the mishap report, he is trying to ensure that his bosses don't think he did anything wrong and so he could keep going on in his career. So there's something to think about, just kind of a little caveat to that. And there was also 3 surfmen on the boat, which makes it really easy for me to blame them, right? I wasn't the surfman. I was just a trainer or trainee. That is not a good mindset, right? I was certified coxswain, certified heavy weather coxswain, end of my qualification. I was at the controls. It was my fault. I made the turn. So Just something important to understand. Even if you're a trainee at the controls and you make a mistake, it's your mistake. Even though someone else may be in the pilot in command or anything like that, it's still you making the mistake. Do you have the mishap report by chance on here?
I didn't send it. But,
Okay, that's all right. So I guess I can post. You can post that with this, or okay. So basically, it's just I gave the Coast Guard's official report of the mishap. If you want to read it, gives all the levels of reviews and all that type of information. So some of the results of this was understanding ownership. It was a humbling experience for me, for sure. When I started getting underway, I would think about this, especially when I was going out in pretty extreme situations, like 18 to 20 foot seas for 30 or so hours. You start to think about how you're not invincible and how mistakes can happen, which I think made me better because I double checked things, or I was being more vocal, or trying to make sure my crew was better. So I think it helped me become a better person, especially in the Coast Guard. Damage to the Coast Guard asset, again, it was around $80,000 I did damage to it. Ripped all the antennas off, all the radios had to come off, all the 124 inverter had to get removed and put back on. So it was kind of a big deal. The boat was down for almost 5 days, which is an eternity in Coast Guard land. We don't like any boat to be down for any amount of time, especially when you've done the problem that's not maintenance. So that was a big problem. It delayed my qualifications, right? My CO completely decided you're not making surfing, right? I'm leaving in 6 months. Don't get back on the boat and surf training. I don't want to lose my stuff. So then the next CO had to come, right? And I got to build up trust with this person, and he knows I knocked the boat down once. So that one moment pretty much changed the course of my career for about 2 years. It delayed my qualification. Understand the ego of others. That just goes back to some of the people on the boat had a hard time accepting that this had occurred and they were part of it, right? No one likes the stigma of being someone a part of a mishap like that. So a lot of people would minimize it, that type of thing. I was the one driving, right? It was my fault, but it's just something to understand that your CFI, if you have a mishap, someone else's ego might be, you might cause issues. And other people's professional careers are obviously affected. One surfman actually never got back onto a 47 after that. It kind of destroyed his outlook of the career. The other two are still in doing Coast Guard stuff, but I did kind of destroy one of the surfman's careers. He had never been in a situation like that on a Coast Guard boat, and it kind of ruined his image of what he wanted to do. So that's pretty much it. These are some pictures from my Coast Guard career. I got tons and tons of pictures, but some fun ones up there if anyone wants to look at those. But does anyone have any questions, feedback, anything like that about the situation or in general? Yes, sir.
How often is a boat flipped in training?
Can you repeat that question so I get it?
Yeah, so he asked how often is a boat flipped in training. So it's never purposely flipped. The Coast Guard never puts its boat into a situation where it's going to cause $80,000 in damage or more, or put the people at risk, right? It is not said and done that when that boat rolls over that you're coming back up in any reasonable amount of time. So that is not a practice. So if you ever see and Coast Guard boats normally don't get rolled over, right? That was a knockdown, right? We went to about 120 degrees over. About 95%, there's only been 2 or 3 instances where a Coast Guard boat actually rolled 360 degrees around, and it takes a tremendous wave to do that. Most of the time it gets hit, it rolls 100, 160, 180 degrees, and then it rolls back the same way. So it's never purposely done. That is not something we want to do. We want to go into surf training and never hit a wave, never hit a break, right? That's the purpose is that you're so good that you don't even need these skills. You just drive around, pick people up, and drive back out, and it's none the wiser.
How often does it happen accidentally?
So normally it depends on the season because it's based on weather. So if we have a really good season, it'll probably happen twice across the entire United States. If we have a normal off season, then it's probably like maybe once, probably none. So, and places like, Cape Disappointment, we're doing surf training, 40, 50, 60 hours in the surf for 5 straight weeks, they'll probably have a knockdown during that training session. Yeah.
So as I understand it, you underestimated or you underestimated the distance between the first wave and the second wave. You thought you had more time?
So if you want to ask what my perspective was at the moment, was when I looked back, it looked as if the wave was directly behind me. So what happened was the wave was actually sitting, so if the 47's here, the wave was actually turned. So it gave an illusion to me that the wave was directly behind me. It was actually traveling to my right. So I actually turned into its path, even though it was behind me. So it's kind of understanding because you don't know maybe how waves work, but how the contour of the ocean is right there, there's actually a large bar that sticks out. So as the wave contacts that, it refracted the wave. So as I was turning, it was actually turning with me. So it just chased me into the same position.
Your intent was to put the wave on your
My intent was the high side would pass where I was, and I would be turning to the low side, or like where the wave wouldn't be breaking. So no potential energy. All the potential energy, from my perspective, was behind me. So as I turned, it just chased me over here and dumped all the energy on the boat.
So in non-boat terms, you misjudged the shape of the wave.
Basically, I misjudged the direction of the wave.
Yeah.
And those waves, those waves are moving 20, 30 knots. So it's not easy. Once you make a mistake, it's not, they're chasing you. You're not going to get away.
If you would have turned faster or sooner, would that have made any difference at all?
So I was doing a max efficiency turn on the 47. It literally wouldn't turn any faster than what I was doing. So when you make a turn in the surf, you do, it's just like losing your engine, right? You go to max glide, the most efficient way to fly. Same thing on the 47. When you make a turn, you do it the most efficient turn to turn. So,
if you would have turned earlier, would that make any difference at all?
yes, because I would have been maybe on the peak of the wave, not under the break. So you're just where the wave is breaking, but that's not the problem. Really is what happened to make me into that specific situation. Yes, sir.
So the entire crew is on the deck.
Yep.
Everyone, seatbelts on and a seat.
No.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so he's asking if everyone was strapped in and in a seat. So only 2 people on the forward 2 chairs are actually in a seat driving, and they're strapped to the seat and then also strapped to the boat with what we call heavy weather boat belts, or these belts that you wear around your waist. Everyone else is standing. It is way better to stand because you have these things called knees, so you can actually absorb when the boat crashes or you make a mistake, right? So they're strapped to the boat on either side and tight, so they're kind of stabilized that way, but they have kind of built-in shock absorbers where the boat driver gets to feel it in their back. So. I don't know time. Am I good?
I think we can do it. Good time to wrap it up, though.
Okay.
First round of clock training. And as I say, it takes some serious professionalism sometimes to come up here and admit your mistakes. But I also notice, having made them myself. But does this remind you, any of the veterans that have been here for a while and seen a bunch of these briefs, does this remind you of anything? Go ahead. Yeah. Does this remind you of any particular story you might have heard in this room? This is the same thing that I did. You guys seen my Jaguar brief? Those are the same stuff. Complacency, overconfidence, ego, trying to minimize, once after the fact, it's not that big a deal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's what you're doing? It's the same thing. So when Danny said, hey, I've got this brief on something that happened on the water on a boat for the aviation safety stand down, and we talked about it, I said, oh yeah, that's completely appropriate. Because the point is, yeah, we're in aviation and he's in some pretty hard charging maritime situations. Same risk management is risk management. So I hope we all got something out of that. And I say, look at this slide. This all applies to aviation, even though it has to do with a boat rolling over. So also has a lot to do with big crew coordination. Right now we're flying, us and an instructor maybe. But once you start working with a whole bunch of people, that whole crew coordination becomes really critical. So, all right. Thanks again, Danny. So what we're going to do now, I was toying with this. We're still playing with the technology, but I think the way to do this is right now I'm just about to hit send from my cell phone, and I just posted a link to all you guys that are out there on chat. So please, somebody on chat, tell me that you've got this link to a YouTube. It's there? Okay, good. So what I was thinking of doing is playing this online and continuing to record it, but I'm not so sure the audio is going to come through. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause the recording here. All you guys that are online, stay logged in, okay? and then go to that YouTube link and watch that video. So normally we show an AOPA training safety debrief. This one's a little different. It's called A Real Pilot Story from AOPA. It's about 15 minutes long. So what I want to do is, my computer clock says here it's 11:11. So we're going to show this movie here in the room. We're going to shut the recording down. And you guys out in internet land,